Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for joining us today on today's episode or interview episode of Major Players, where I bring to you guys a major player in their industry. This is a good friend of mine. His name is Brett Holcomb. He's in business acquisitions. I'll let him go through exactly what he does because I'm interested in it, and I know you guys will too. Like I always said, you got to get connected with people who are playing a big game in their industry, major players, so you can become one. And you can't do that if I grab Brett like I do now, stick him on the phone, and you guys never hear what we talk about. So I figured this is a good way for me to share my friends, my network with you guys. So thanks again, Brett, for joining me today with this. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Appreciate you having me. Let's get to it.
For sure. So do me a favor, man. Tell the listeners and people who are going to be watching this what it is that you actually do, because I messed it up. So you're more eloquent than me for sure.
Okay, very good. Well, my name is Brett Holcomb. You know, with I got to tell you back before I get to front a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So I'll just keep it simple and say that, I've been in the entrepreneur space for 30 plus years, 3 decades worth of roller coaster ride of going up and down and up and down.
Hmm.
Um, Almost for the past decade, I jumped into M&A, acquiring small to mid-sized businesses ranging anywhere from 5 million in sales to 100 million in sales or so. That's kind of my category. Um, and it just came off of frustration, but looking for the need to stabilize and really use my talents. So what I did was, again, started acquiring businesses. Figured out that I'm better at finding a business that already exists and then adding on to it and scaling that business. So,
Mm.
kind of the cheat code of not starting from the beginning, getting it over a certain threshold, and then taking that and then scaling. So, aligning my talents, figuring out how to acquire businesses, created an investment club. We got
Mm.
people now that come in, invest in us, and we're just buying businessmen, doing them at scale, trying to stay within the home services space, which is going to be your electrical, plumbing, and all the verticals and horizontals around that. So that's my focal point. And we're buying mainly Southeast
Okay.
region of the country.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So, tell me a little bit about your background, man. Like, for people listening, did you always do that? What were you doing before? Because you said you're a serial entrepreneur or recovering. Like, what were you doing and
Recovering at
how did
business.
that work?
Yeah. So, I started out really at an early age, we got the grays on us, so it kind of tell our age a little bit. And what you figure out early is you start small, you start with what you know,
Hmm.
but the world is much bigger, right?
Right.
So
Right.
I started off a really small business. I managed to get into programs and different information that allowed me to learn how to scale businesses. So I was fortunate to come in and scale a few businesses to get them to that 8-figure mark from
Hmm.
scratch, which is, you know, for argument's sake, it's not big business, but from someone who comes from a very humble beginning to
Hmm.
figure that out and get to that space was a big deal.
Right.
So from there, you go through the roller coaster ride, but again, the talent came in figuring out how to scale these businesses and
Right.
understanding the nuance of scale, and
Hmm.
then being able to now take that and apply that to acquiring businesses that are already at a certain level and being able to scale. So again, you have that launch pad in which you can build upon. So that's what I was fortunate enough to do. I don't know if I fully answered your question,
Yeah. Yeah,
but
you did. So what kind of businesses, like when you were starting and you were scaling stuff or basically building your war chest of understanding, like, okay, here's what we're doing. What kind of businesses were they then? Like or was it random?
yeah, so my first big business was actually a women's accessories business,
Really?
right?
Okay. There you
Yes,
go.
women's accessory. I started off in a kiosk at a kiosk in malls in here in the Georgia area. Baltimore, what have you. We
Uh-huh.
scaled those to full locations, but what happened was we found a few home run products in
Hmm.
which we went and we actually had those mass produced. And then I became more of an importer and wholesaler of those
Mm,
products. That's where the scale came from.
got it.
So I had some pretty big clients that came and bought in volume because of the popularity of really about seven categories, seven SKUs, man. It just went crazy. And
That's
so that
crazy.
worked well for 2 years. Yep.
Yeah,
End
yeah.
up selling that, and that was that. So that was
Wow.
my first taste of, any kind of acquisitions. Now, I
Mm,
will say I didn't sell it for much because we kind of hit the 2008, 2009 mark
right.
where things were coming down a bit, but it was a great experience. And, that was my first learning curve.
Right, right. Well, I mean, and that's huge, man. And we talk about this a lot. A lot of people say they get in business, but they like I got into real estate, but there was never a conversation about exit. I mean, when we say sell a
Hmm.
property, that's when we do it. But like the reality of it is technically selling something is not an exit. That's a sell. Exiting means like you
Hmm.
like, okay, cool, like we exited this property on purpose. There was a plan. And there's also a
Yeah.
plan for the exit, the money that you made, right? So that's cool that you say that. And like I said, congratulations, bro. Like that's huge. Like anybody listening to this, you know, things have changed, information has changed, but probably like you and like a lot of people that either were doing stuff prior to that, all the stuff that we know now wasn't really like accessible. No one was talking about exiting. There was like, dude, like I sold this and I made some money. Any money was good, at some point, right? If you weren't just selling a product. So question is, so thanks for that, man. I appreciate that. And hopefully that hits home with people. But like, how would in your life, like when you were growing up, like were you raised around money, businesses? Like
Mhm.
how was it growing up? Did your family talk about money? The long head nod says no.
No. The short answer is
Sorry to
absolutely
rip that
not.
scab
No.
off.
I Yeah, right. So my mom was from a small town in Alabama.
Okay.
My grandparents owned a cotton farm.
Mm,
So her and her siblings grew up picking cotton and ran away at 18 to move up to New York.
wow.
And they just got, pedestrian jobs. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
my mom retired from a telephone company
Mm,
working over 30 years. So that was the extent of it. It was her and I was what was called the latchkey kid in the New York City Housing Authority projects.
wow.
So
Okay.
no, money was not discussed like it didn't come from money. I don't have the down and out story. She did pretty well for,
Yeah.
just her and I, but
Uh-huh.
no discussions of money. The money came from the environment,
Mm,
right? And so you
yeah.
learn. It's funny, I spoke of it, but money came from, you know, conversations with quote unquote hustlers or
Yeah.
conversations with, there was one guy who owned a store. And I just remember I learned good and bad, right? In a sense that in the projects, quote unquote, it's a very cash intensive environment. We don't talk about
Yeah.
credit, we don't talk about leverage,
Yeah.
right? Literally, my education was an all cash education. So you grow up with that premise of not focusing on understanding how good debt works or what have you. So that's your
Right.
learning curve. You have to learn that.
Hmm.
But the discipline is you didn't grow up reckless and running up credit cards and all that stuff either.
Right.
So there
Right.
was a balance to it, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
that was the most that was discussed financially from my
Mm.
upcoming at this point. I learned the rest of it as I got older.
Right, right. And it's interesting because when I talk to people, especially doing these, when I interview people on purpose, right? I find that especially with our interview series, there's a through line, and I like to bring it up now, is like somebody either had an experience or they had exposure. So like what was that for you? Did like you're saying you didn't have exposure to money and wealth and those conversations. Like did you have like this tipping point experience where you're like, okay, I'm gonna get like I'm gonna go run it. Like I need money, or I'm gonna go build a business, or I'm gonna go do something. What was that for you?
Man, you know, it's funny, man. You know, my aunt used to tell this story when I was 9 years old. I made this proclamation that I was not going to work for anyone
Mm,
and that I was going to own my own business. And I'm 9 years old. Where did I get this from? I don't know. But the
right.
funny thing is, I really didn't have many jobs in my life.
Mm,
So I actually partially made that come true.
right.
And I don't know, that was just something that was rooted in my mind. I went to college, graduated from college, but didn't do anything, you know, business management,
Hmm.
no jobs. I didn't do anything. I went pretty much right into entrepreneurship.
Right.
Um, so I don't know where that came from, but to answer your question from a tipping point perspective, I really believe you know, I think I'm like most people who start at that bottom level. I
Hmm.
read Rich Dad Poor Dad
Okay. All right.
and kind of got my mind going about understanding assets and you
Mm,
know and to me it told a half story, but it was a good enough story, right?
right. Right.
Where, you know, I bought the board games and my family and I are playing
Yeah.
the board game and like we're really into it. And but trained me to think about building assets. So that was
Mm,
honestly my first exposure to truly understanding the difference in assets, right? Liabilities, that whole cash flow quadrant. And
right.
still to this day, I stay mentally focused on being a business owner, an
Mm,
investor, and off the board being a capitalist,
right.
you know, at the grand scheme of it all. So
Yeah.
that was my exposure. Honestly, it was reading that book and the rabbit hole it took me down,
Mm,
learning more and more, just becoming this bookworm. I just went into this phase where I read, you know, a couple of hundred books over the
yeah.
course of like 4 years, man, and just really mentally made me fortified and got me in that direction. So I would say that that was my catalyst in the direction that I took.
Mm,
So
that's
no
interesting.
formal list, no mentors. If you want to call Kiyosaki and all the others that I read, I had more like authors as book as
Yeah.
mentors, and later on YouTube as mentors and a couple of
Right.
courses. But it's all, you know, self-learn,
Hmm.
self-motivated. Nothing that came across my desk or no one that came across my desk that said, "Here, let me show you the way."
Right. Right. And it's interesting, man, because we've talked about this, like, everyone. I I eventually turned the corner. And now that I'm older, people say, well, like what were like past mistakes and things like that. And I always say wrong mentors. I had the wrong mentors. They were doing right, but they weren't the right mentor for me. They got me through. And it isn't because like I just look at who I study now. I studied people when I was younger, and now that I'm older, I study companies or founders of companies and what they did. So
Yeah.
my decisions are different. But to your point, that comes from age, that comes from experience, the 3 decades of work, getting kicked and stuff like that in the marketplace, and then turning it around and also having the fortitude to not quit. So yeah, thanks for not quitting. And thanks for those
Well,
books too.
I'll add to this too. I think you know, there's this paradox in a sense where, you know, for me, being in business, you learn the foundational things. So you're doing a lot of reading on systems and scaling and growing businesses or what have you. But then on the other side, you're looking to your point at founders. You're looking at
Mhm.
people who run major organizations because that is like your moonshot idea. That's where
Yeah,
you want to be. So you're measuring your future to your current and you're just trying to meet in the middle. And
right.
so you're just developing one end to the other. And I think that's my point of where, you know, I found M&A because
Mm,
it was like, man, if I could just buy businesses, I know what to do with these businesses. And,
right.
you know, there's the cheat code and just skipping this early stage, because I think that early stage keeps you at a very small, right? You're not thinking really huge, or if you're not like this VC and, oh, we're going to build this unicorn or something, you start thinking small and you do small business. I
That's
think
right.
studying the big people and starting at a certain level closes the gap a little bit. So,
1000%. I tell that to my kids, people that are on my team, like, your assets will become your liabilities. So the things that you might have learned in the beginning phases of your career will become your liabilities because then you can't see the new asset. Like
Mhm.
I've always raised, you and I know that I have my fund. I've always raised capital, but I've always been an operator. And that was my asset. But then at some point, like being able to find a deal, close a deal, and all the other things for my investor, like my investors, and not get another, became a liability to me at some point because I was like, all right, I can know, now I have to kind of sit on the other end of the table. So I have to start seeing what I know as a liability and gain a new one. So that's interesting that, that you bring that up because we talk about it a lot,
Yeah.
with my team. But speaking of that, which is what I wanted to ask you, like right now you're in this phase of M&A and like you're looking at businesses, buying businesses. Like, what is it that you're seeing right now? I mean, aside from the obvious, like there's the AI thing, there's Bitcoin, money's moving into basically technology. What are some of the things you're looking at? Because you said something interesting and I wrote it down. Like you look for like more of the service businesses. Like what's the value that you're seeing right now in most service businesses that most people should be taking advantage of and they're just missing it.
What I'm seeing is,
I like how smart guys pause
it's
before they
it's
talk.
kind of like, yeah, I have to kind of gather myself, right? So it's like that quote, the Wayne Gretzky quote,
Mm,
right? Where
yeah.
you don't skate to where the puck is, you skate to where the puck is going,
Mm,
right? And I think the problem is people are somewhat short-sighted. So what I'm seeing though is that you also have to be careful of not being too long-sighted because of things like technology. So
right.
there's a sweet spot. So if I'm answering your question correctly, what I see is a place in the market that I can take advantage of that is recession resistant, that
Mm,
works in any market, right? No matter what the climate is, from anything from something like COVID happening again
hmm
to where we are now, to where if something sinks or something grows, it still is not impacted. And
right.
so the home services mentally is what I see from a positioning perspective. It's what
Right.
I see as some of your safer bets, and then some of the ancillary, and complementary businesses around the big. So many people run to plumbing and electrical HVAC, but there's
hmm
so many subcategories of that same thing. They just survive. And then the second thing to tie that with technology, I'm a big thing. I have this thing called Lab, and
Okay.
it's big, or I have a couple. It's called Safe, right?
Okay.
I'm looking at service-based asset, uh, AI resistant,
hmm
um, and then I'm messing up my own acronym, but essentially, fundamentally essential businesses.
Okay.
That's what so that's safe, right? If you think about service-based, AI resistant, fundamentally essential businesses.
hmm
And so when you think about that, think about where we are right now and all this disruption happening, right? So you're in real estate. It's not going to be a whole lot disruption to an apartment building, right? But
Right.
there is going to be disruption in how it's managed and in what happens within the sustainability of that apartment building,
That's right.
right?
That's
So
right.
whether whether your property management is affected or what have you, but what's not going to be affected is the actual work that gets done. So you have to be
hmm
on the right side of the asset.
That's right.
And when you think about it, so from my perspective, it's well, if I own an HVAC company, if the robots come and take over this and that, long as I own this brand,
Yeah.
right? And I have the ability to attract people to come to get service, I have in my hand the ability to say, do I want a robot to work for me or a human to work for me? I
Yeah.
have that ability. So if I'm greedy, I might say, I'm gonna get rid of this human and get this robot that work 24/7. It's gonna be less labor costs, so on and so forth. No headaches, no sick days, all that good stuff, right?
Right.
But
Right.
I'm on the right side of the asset. So
Mm,
what I see is people are not thinking about that from a positioning standpoint of
mm,
what's going to happen in the next 5 years. How is it going to impact what they do? And how do they get on the right side of the asset to be able to control things versus being a victim to it? So my businesses, they have to be on the right side and be able to control what's going to happen versus being victimized by it.
right. So, in short, you'd have to have something that has options. So, if somebody needs to add AI or data, humans or non-humans, the delivery of that service, you need to be in the holding side of those choices, not the delivery side of those choices to the business, right? So, like,
So when you say delivery, clarified delivery.
yeah, so we'll use your examples. Let's say you have a HVAC company. You can have robots do the HVAC repairs, or you can own
Mhm.
the company that can choose the robot or choose the human that does repairs. So your acquisition of the business gives you choices, but not the delivery of service to the business, right? Because that can change.
Yeah, and it's simply put, you need IP or brand or goodwill,
Mm,
right? Those are
right.
simple things. If I own a brand that is recognizable, where I own a place in your mind that says, oh, if I need my HVAC, I'm going to come to Brett's HVAC company,
Hmm.
then I own a. So regardless of how I fulfill that work, long
Hmm.
as I do fulfill it at a high level, that brand survives,
Right.
regardless of technology. So
Hmm.
that is another key element to it. That
That
was the
makes sense.
lab thing that I was talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think,
Mhm.
because M&A has turned big. M&A has turned big in the private sector. Like regular people are now considering, I'm going to buy a bunch of companies and bolt them together, right? Which has been done from a institutional caliber for a long time. Before private equity, there was, LBOs, which is leveraged buyouts of companies doing basically the same thing, equity and debt together, hacking off a department and then turning around and selling it. What do you think people are like? Because it's been taught quite a bit. Like, what do you think the mistakes people are making as they're doing that now? Because you have a lot of small people that are trying to do that in a sense to where it's fast money, but really it's not. Like, are you seeing mistakes people are making as well? And the good stuff. I don't like talking about bad stuff all the time, but first mistakes and then what are they doing right?
Yeah, so what they're doing right in a nutshell is just the thought of taking advantage of it
Mm,
while the opportunity is here.
okay.
Just being aware. Most people are not aware of this opportunity
Right.
at level. Let me clarify. Most people are not aware that they could actually do it and don't have to
Mm,
take their money and dump it and try to get into a private equity fund or what have you, or
right.
something along those lines. Like they can take control and do it themselves. So that's what they're doing right.
Hmm.
What they're doing wrong is most people are not properly assessing businesses. They're not understanding how this business really works,
Yeah.
so whether you have MBA that jumps into it and they're the spreadsheet kings and the data kings, but they're not human kings, right? They don't understand the human aspects of things. So they're not
Right.
reading the room properly. They're not doing a proper quality of earnings, if you will, and just understanding, how this business really functions,
Hmm. Hmm.
and what can go wrong in this business, and then some of the nuances that happen in the business, that from years of experience, it helps me understand it because again, I built them so I
Right.
can see how they run versus someone who hasn't and doesn't understand how these nuances can impact them in a very negative way
Hmm.
and impact their ROI as a result.
Right, right. So, I mean, and you and I know this, we've talked about this before. How important is there's two versions of that. So I'll break the question down. One, how important is money in doing these things, like having money? And then how important is access to money? Those are two different categories. So, very few people even understand that you do, because you're in the business acquisition. I'm in multifamily real estate acquisition. So like
Yeah.
let me know what your thoughts are on those two things because those are two components that people really don't consider. And this is very few times I can have a mental conversation about clarity with that somebody gets that.
Yeah. Man, it's really interesting because, we know that I'll put it to you like this. I call it the Mason-Dixon line in
Mm.
M&A, right?
Okay.
There's a threshold of the 2 million EBITDA mark, right?
Okay.
So earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. At $2 million, you go from below $2 million, you have a different sort of buyer, right?
Okay. Right.
Above $2 million, you start moving from a pond to a lake to now the ocean. And
Right.
$2 million, you're swimming with sharks and whales and all kinds of creatures that come from the ocean. And
Right.
so what comes with that, though, to answer your question is if I have the simple saying, opportunities bring forth agreements, and you know this.
Mm.
If I bring you the right opportunity, it is hard for you not to attract money if it's the right opportunity,
That's right.
right? So,
That's right.
so to me, money follows opportunity,
Hmm.
and it's really that simple. Debt follows opportunity.
That's right.
Um, and then the honorable mention is capability follows
Mm.
opportunity. So how to package, who am I? How do I put together? And if I'm not that great, how do I still package? I pride myself in being an assembler. I know how to
Mm.
put things together. That's one of the things that I learned. Maybe that was from the early beginnings of growing up in the New York City Housing Authority, right?
Right.
And
Right.
and so you just kind of learn how to assemble things, how to maneuver and see where your assets truly come from, how you put them together.
Hmm.
So what that lends to is on a smaller side, you have something from a debt perspective, you have the SBA, right? So
Right.
things under 5 million, you're playing a little smaller. You have the SBA that will lend you up to 90% of your money. You have a
Mm.
10% cash problem that you have to figure out.
Right.
That
Right.
if you have the right agreement, that's not the hardest thing to get,
Right.
right? Same thing at the larger scale, though, you have more people wanting to be a part of that business. People are now looking to allocate money at over that $2 million
$1 million mark.
EBITDA mark. So you got
Right.
$2 million is going to be 10 million, $20 million company or what have
Mm.
you. So essentially, if you have that opportunity,
Yeah.
that money flows to you. Like they know that they understand the landscape. All you have to do is present it to the right person, and you will get money. The
Mm.
debt is much easier. You have a whole lot more choices in which you can attract that debt that
Hmm.
pays for that. So it's just easier to do bigger deals, as you
Right.
probably figured that out as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Right. So,
And I tell people that because we have our club that we're starting, our real estate club. So one of the bigger things is probably like you have with your people that you talk to in your club. It's like there's levels to, yes, there's always access to capital, and but you're going to need some knowledge and some experience. And it doesn't have to be yours. To your part, you can be a great assembler, be a
yep,
part of something, and be able to like
yep.
have your advisory board or put people on your in your group or whatever it is that you're buying people, right? And close something. But you got to present that in a way where you're a part of that ecosystem knowledge experience base where you are something. And that's a real estate play. Like I didn't do business, I did real estate the whole time. So I know exactly what you're talking about. So thanks for sharing that.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, just to clarify, it's syndication essentially, right? It's just
yeah, yeah.
putting deals together. It's just
Mhm.
knowing how all these things work and you put it together. And sometimes by the time you might end up with 3%, you might end up with 20%, right?
Right,
It
right.
just depends on where you are and where your experience level is. So,
Hmm.
I tell people all the time, just get your foot in the door.
Yeah.
You just get your foot in the door, get your first transaction, and if you can prove that you know how to put that together and it operates pretty well, then your second one is easier and you have more leverage. So all
That's right.
you're doing is climbing up that hill.
That's
So,
right. That's right. I know one of my buddies says it all the time. He's like, I'd rather have a seed from a watermelon rather than 100% of a grape. And it's true,
mhm.
because once you start realizing like, oh wow, like I have a huge opportunity to be a part of something big, like you said, and you can get into a company that later has a bigger exit, and you get a piece of that, that gives you all the things that you need, especially if you have a good partnership, it's a good business, and you can piggyback, forward.
Yep.
That's interesting.
Yep.
So from a capital side, and like you were talking about getting the debt, where are people getting the debt right now for businesses? Like, is like, I know there's local banks and SBAs, but like, is there some big group that's like constantly looking to give debt to business acquisitions, specific ones right now?
There are a lot of private institutions coming into the space.
Mm,
So whether that's from a mezzanine, a short-term bridge kind of gapping thing to
yeah.
a more long, I'm starting to see even some more long-term lenders that are coming in rivaling the SBA, but at larger
Mm,
numbers, right?
really?
Meaning larger amounts.
Mm,
Yeah. So and I think just to clear things up, there's probably three, well, I mean, there's more than three categories, but there is the um, $0 to $5 million acquisition space. There's I mean, it's kind of like this gap. And
yeah,
then you
yeah.
say, oh, there's typically a 10 million, right, to 30 to 50 million,
Hmm.
right? And then there's 50 million above, right? 50
Right,
million and two, 300 million, then 300 million and beyond,
right.
right? So each one is different. So people specialize in each of those gaps. And that's what I'm saying. That $2 to $10 million EBITDA gap
Hmm.
is starting to get bigger and bigger because what's
Mm,
happening is some of your larger funds and intermediary funds are now coming and playing a smaller game. They're allocating more capital in that space. So there's a lot more money. And same thing with investment banks and so on and so forth. They're starting to allocate money in that space where before it was 100 million or more.
right.
So the game is opening up as a result of all these people. And then there's some private lenders, and they find that that's the sweet spot as well, that $2 to $10 million EBITDA space.
Yeah, yeah. So do you think there's like a because I look at a lot of stuff too as it relates to like what is it called? Times earnings. Like, are there specific industries right now that have like used to have a higher earnings? Like, if somebody was going to buy a company or, their, what is that called? Their market cap. We say cap rate, but businesses use, their whatever, 7 times earnings. Like, is there different industries that have now changed that weren't before that people are giving a higher multiple now to that weren't like that maybe like 5, 6 years ago, other than
Yes.
the obvious?
Yes. Well, I mean, I don't know what the obvious is at this point. You talk about your laundromats,
Yeah,
your
yeah.
storage spaces, your car washes,
Mm,
all the things that anytime you hear too many people talking about something, it's just a
too
recipe
late.
for disaster for
Yeah.
that thing to go
Yeah.
up, right?
Right. Right.
So, you can look at that with apartment buildings,
Mm,
if you go back 10 years, they will, your door prices were much lower than
yeah.
they are now in the same areas. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
Like, because it just became a really popular asset class
Mm,
within the overall sector. That's just what happens. And the same thing here. Like once people start talking about laundromats and car
mm,
washes, and then PE jumps in. And once PE could jumps in and some of your more larger, um, whether it's regional or national buyers come in, the EBITDA and enterprise values increase,
right.
thereby increasing the multiple. So now you're just paying more for something, even at a smaller scale. So it trickles down.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
going back to that, like the SBA and below 5 million, those are being impacted by private equity buying the larger companies at much
Mm,
higher multiple, trickles down. And now those things that maybe were at a 2 and 3 times multiple are now at 5 and 6 times multiples. So
right.
yes, it's impacting some key things. And I think the other thing is that people are looking for passive income
Mm,
opportunities. So if you think about what I named, you have heavy assets like real estate and machinery,
Right.
um, it's going to be a little bit more turnkey. So your storage space is more turnkey, right?
Mhm.
Where you put a management company in place and you really are passive in that ownership.
Right.
Um, car washes, same thing, especially
Mhm.
if it's handheld car wash,
Yeah.
self-serve, what have you, right? So, all you have a mechanical problem more so than anything. Make sure the equipment works and you pay your
Yeah.
water bill.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
It's all contracts.
those are more attractive to
Mm.
people because it's more hands off,
Right.
so those are some things to look for in it. But yeah, most of those things that people talk about a lot are going to be impacted.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. It reminds me of the triple net, single tenant commercial buildings in the past where it was like a AutoZone, freestanding building, a Walgreens, those are CVS, those are all being disrupted because once, any bigger firm like private equity, they just want to clip a coupon, or a single person wanted to clip a coupon of 4% because you have a great tenant, great location, they're taking care of everything. Once that got disrupted, it was like, all right, now we have these out parcels in real estate at the back of some parking lot that needs to be filled that so I understand exactly what you're saying because that became very popular a few years back.
Yep.
Man,
Yep.
that's interesting. So that said, it was something else I wanted to ask you because you caught my attention on something. I usually write stuff down, but I was listening because like I said, I learned too because I have to weigh
Mhm.
business and real estate up against each other. Because I'm like, we talked
Yep.
about this. What are someone's options? You have money, you're going to get way more cash flow buying a company. Period. End of story. It is what it is. The difference of it, you know, if you buy a multifamily real estate, you're going to get less, but your appreciation is different. Your appreciation is good too, but you're also going to have somebody to have to buy that company. But like, I can always go to any marketplace and be like, hey, we have a portfolio of 1,000 apartment units in this market, professionally managed. Do you want it? And some bigger firm will want that because they'll want it as a part of their portfolio, or at least a percentage. So, man, you said something so interesting to me, and it slipped because I was caught in the moment of listening. But that's interesting. So, talk to me about your club. I know we were talking about investment clubs and stuff like that. That's becoming more and more popular, especially in your world of like, real estate's always had these little groups, but I noticed more and more business groups, business acquisition groups are popping up a lot more. Before they were
Yeah.
incubator and tech related, and now they're actually service business related. I think that's interesting. So like I know you have yours and you're kind of expanding it and scaling it. What's your target for that? Like how are you looking to do that in the different levels?
So, I would say it's less of a target and um, more of a hole in the marketplace,
Mm,
right?
yeah,
So I think that you have a lot of people who want to be involved in this, right? Me being an African American man coming from the circumstances that I come from, I know a lot of people who want to invest,
yeah,
but unfortunately, many people just are not accredited investors, quite frankly.
right, right.
So I wanted to address that problem.
Hmm.
And so an investment club was the perfect um, application to address that problem because you don't have to be accredited. I can get up to 99 people. I can't advertise like a 506C,
Hmm.
right? Reg D, um, but I build relationships within the club and teach them in the same
Mm,
vein, and they get to invest because of the familiarity and the education they have. And
right.
then the goal is to turn them into accredited investors,
Absolutely. Yeah.
right? So they can participate on a larger scale. So for me, I do it at a
Mm.
smaller scale just from the standpoint, and obviously I can take accredited investors as
Yeah, of
well.
course.
So that's the beauty of it. But I get 99 people that I can come in and I can get most of the deals done, in which I'm looking for with that. Now, it's not the my most favorite management problem to have, right? But at the same time, I'm granting opportunity. And it just depends on the asset. Some I might go outside of that and just say, I'm just going to take accredited investors and
Hmm.
just deal with a small handful of people. But for the most part, that's the beauty of it. People are more
Mm.
involved. they're getting it's no LP, GP. They're more everybody's kind of a GP in a sense, but
Yeah.
right, they get to vote and say, yeah, we want that, but then
Mm.
I run that,
Yeah.
as the operator. So
Mm.
I think that's the thing. It's just filling a hole that's not there. You hear uh, private equity gets these reputations. So sometimes when people hear it, oh, you're just going to come in and ruin my business and so on and so forth,
Yeah.
So there's different marketing and brand positioning that you're using this for to stay human in a sense, right? You're talking human and human when you're selling something
Hmm.
versus I represent this institution that is, the big bad institution that's here to strip you of your business and fire everyone and make it efficient at the sake of the customer, the brand, so on and so forth.
Mm.
And that's the stereotype that you're fighting. And so if I'm not going to be as big as some of these PE firms, why would I take negative connotations of these PE
True.
firms? Why would I not start fresh and make mine more grounded and
Yeah.
more
User friendly.
uh, yep, more friendly. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just, and that's interesting. I was having a talk with somebody that, a buddy of mine's, we're working on our club. And I was telling him, I was like, and we've talked about this, a little controversial. I'm also like, it depends on what side of the table you sit on, because I found that that same people I bought properties from in the past, like apartment building owners and stuff, where we've done seller financing, that didn't want to raise the rents, required me to raise the rents for capital and for them to exit, but they didn't want to be that. My wife says like you're super insensitive, and I'm like, well, I've always sat on the side of them, even though I'm a consumer of capital, but like borrowing capital to close deals. I've always sat at the capital table, so I understand the requirements of what it means for me to get into a deal, right? And I think very few people understand that. And it's good that you have a club because as I talk to like people who either work with me or my investors or people that learn from me, I always have to kind of like express that to them that in every business you have a job, you have a role to play. And it's one
Yeah.
thing if you're like sitting on the other side, but when you have to make a return for your investors and you have to hit certain projections and targets and things for you to do that, and it affects everybody, you really do have to kind of come in with the sense to where is, I hate to say it this way, but it does become like a mechanical thing. You're like, okay, we have to get to X amount of dollars more in revenue. So we need to do that, and then the team has to get that done, and people have to understand. So it's a dance. It's about treating people right and fair, but it is sitting on the other side of the business. So it's good that you have a club that you can kind of have people see that, right? Because that's an interest that, like you said, it's a management of expectations for sure.
And I'll add to that because there's some key points you made with that. You
Hmm.
know, there's from from um from the Black Panther movie, right? A good man could never be king, right?
Uh,
And so essentially, people people are looking, see, most people want something and they typically don't pay attention to the process of how you get it,
mm,
right? So in your case, you just mentioned how, you have no eye you have to worry about, right? So raising the rent is part of the strategy to get you that 20% IRR that you're looking for. You want that, but
right,
you're not questioning how I need to get it. And a lot of people can't make those decisions because, oh, I care for this and I care for that. Same thing with me. It's we look at CAGR, right, growth rate. And
right.
so this company has to grow at a certain amount to be able to hit my targets to be able to get you that cash flow that you signed up in the beginning to get. Because
That's
for
right.
you, you might do appreciation. I'm more, hey, I'm looking at quarterly or monthly distributions from this company. So this company has to be a cash cow.
That's right.
And I'm going to have to make decisions for that to happen because my first priority is
Mhm.
to get you that money and at the same time balance the integrity of the
That's
business,
right.
right? Make sure that it stays on brand, not burning anyone to get it, but how do I get it? How do I grow this company? How do I grow these revenues and my profits so I can distribute it to you?
That's
And
right.
so if you don't understand that, it's easy to sit back from the sideline and tell me what I'm doing right or what I'm doing wrong.
Hmm.
But, my top priority is to get you that return that I said I would and really go alpha and beat that and get a
That's right.
premium return for you.
Right.
So,
And I think that's, I literally, we had a webinar about this. I think that's why people seek out, like, for real estate, value added real estate. They look for something that's
mm,
already, like, non-performing, and they want to bring it up to snuff. So my concept has always been
yeah,
like, why don't we just buy something really nice and bring that up to snuff, because there's nothing to fix, but there's, I'm not going to say inefficiencies because we're not looking at expenses, but we are looking at growth and revenues and top line. And that kind of shakes some people's, like you said, they're like, oh, well, we're going to have to raise the rents. Like, well, we can only fix the expenses and get that so far to zero before we have to look at incoming revenue, which is, in real estate, it's rents or something like that. But in businesses, it's cost of goods and things like that. So it's an interesting dynamic. And it's my catchphrase. I'm like, depends on what side of the table you're going to eat off of. Once you sit on that other side, you can't complain about the other person's food anymore. You have to be very diligent about what your job is because you have a fiduciary responsibility now. It's not, like that. That's where I think, I've said it before. Some people aren't cut out for it. They have the capability, but they don't have the capacity because there's things that need to be done and decisions that need to be made, and they're for the good of everybody. And it's an ethical decision. So it's good that you have a club, and we're getting ready to do ours as well. And that's the target. Is I always say target, right? That's my target for everybody, is like to help people understand like what this really takes. That it's when you're responsible for a lot of people's livelihoods or keeping a roof over somebody's head, like you have to make some tough decisions, and you have to know why you're making those decisions, right? So man,
yeah,
thanks for being responsible. Thanks for doing those things because you're helping a lot of people. You're buying companies, you're doing these things, you're expanding and scaling. That's why we're still talking. Because I talked to a lot of my buddies I met a couple of years ago, and they're not really looking to grow or scale. So it's like, you know, it's like it's like, what are we going to talk about if we're not growing and we can't add to each other, then we have to take away, right? Or not take away, but there's not nothing being added. So I appreciate that. So in your space though, and you can answer both of these because one, you're an acquisitions guy, for buying stuff, and then two, just industry specific. Like, what do you think it takes to be a major player in your world? One, buying, for your like you, and then the other one for just the industry alone.
hmm. Um, it's a good question. So to for just buying, just acquiring,
Hmm.
I think it's positioning. It's you being on the radar of the obvious choice for someone to want to give their company or to seek you out to buy a company. There's
Wow.
something you have to do on your end. So whether we call that, branding, personal
Mm.
brand, or what have you, but
Yeah,
you just have to be, so in your case, it's pocket listings and hey, I'm gonna come to you when I first get something, and then it's your off-market search and your ability to find things, but it's your ability to win people over once you do find the things,
that's right.
right? So it's much deeper than, hey, I know this broker, so they're going to send it to me first. It's, yeah, I know this broker, but in our case, some of our stuff is, emotional. You
Mm.
have someone that has owned a business for 30 years and it's their
Yeah,
baby. Just don't want to hand it over to anyone.
that's
So
right.
you have to show capability, compassion,
Mm.
right? And comprehension of where that person wants to go. And
Yeah.
so if you can do these things, you win a lot more people over. And that's from top to bottom, from the attorneys to the accountants to
Mm.
you're dealing with a lot of people
That's
in the
right.
process of not so simple as,
Handing somebody
I
off.
call
Yeah.
your asset cold asset, right? It's
Yeah.
cold because it's just a building, right? So at the
Right.
end of the day, Like your name's not on the marquee or what have you, where, like I said, someone's business that they birthed,
Yeah.
right, and raised like their child, and now
Mm,
it's an adult, they're handing that over. So it's kind of like I become their husband in a
mm.
sense, right? I'm the
That's
husband.
right.
You're handing your daughter over to me, and
Right.
you're saying, hey, giving you my daughter,
Yeah.
they're going to
Take
have
care
your
of her.
last name. You have to take care of my daughter. It's
Yeah,
totally different.
for
Mindset
sure.
is different. Unless you just get to a point where people just don't care and it's just like, just give me my cash
Yeah,
and
I'm
whatever.
done.
I don't care what fire or whatever. And
Yeah.
those happen, right? Because there's
Right.
business in the thing, but a lot of the stuff is personal and customized,
Mm,
so that's I would say you being presenting yourself as that person that is attractive to all these different factors,
mm.
these different facets of people who
Right.
you're going to have to come.
Okay.
And long as you're able to do that, you're going to win more and more. And that's what I'm finding as I,
Mm.
go through this journey.
Okay.
And that's on that side. As it relates to um, the commercial side of things, the industries themselves, it's it's your vision in a sense, right?
Mm.
It's, hey, how can I take this one business, because I do roll-ups and I want to own five, six, 10 of these things of the
Yeah.
same industry or complementary industries, your ability to think about how to think bigger, how to put puzzles together,
Yeah.
right? And always be above the business versus in it, right? So it's your ability to think bigger and assemble and move faster and more efficiently than most people in your space, right? That's
Mm.
the competitive thing, but that's also the scale thing. How do I become, once again, I use my word assembler. How do
Yeah.
I bring in best talent from all aspects? How do I bring in the best resources, the capital? You're responsible for assembling a business. And so if you can think big about that business, and
Mm.
you're tucking in all the key elements, that's your positioning, that's your unique positioning in the
Yeah.
whole space itself. So the mindset to me of
Mm.
how do I think about business? And while other people might be playing at this certain level, I'm looking up here, and
Mm.
up here has a different skill set than what this person is doing there. And just by doing that and executing, I surpass most of these people in the marketplace. And
Right.
so I don't have to turn wrenches to own 30 HVAC companies and put it under one
Mm.
umbrella, right?
That's right.
That's a
That makes total
different
sense.
skill set.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Man, and thanks for sharing that. Because again, to me, I always look at it like, it's one thing to be a player, it's one thing to be a major player. And it's like you have to be both at the same time. And, naturally, if you're playing the game, you're going to get better. So thanks for that. So, like, I think about that too, like, which is why we talk. I think about that in my own company, and I know where I'm headed, but that takes, like you said, and thanks for saying that. I hope anyone listening to that gets it. There's an individual side for you to be the actual founder, visionary guy. And then, so there needs to be either your personal level of respect in the community or companies or the world dealing with your acquisitions. And then there's the business side to it. Like you have to have a big enough vision for people to say, okay, we like him, we like what he's doing, and they can continue to move you up the food chain from an industry standpoint. Like you said, because you're not going to get no one's going to sell to you if they don't kind of have some level of branding reputation about being able to say yes to you and some level of trust and relationships. And then the other side, nobody's going to help you scale capital wise, company wise, debt wise, things like that. If they don't say, okay, well, we just doing one loan with you because that's not what we're looking to do. We want to do 50. And can you do that? What is your total plan? And that's good because if people don't think like what you just said, they can't play the game whatsoever. If they're coming up with, hey, we're going to deal with Brett or we're going to deal with Joe Schmo. Who are we going to pick that we're going to have a long relationship with in the industry? And it's probably going to be Brett because he's thinking this way. So thanks for sharing that, man, because very few people do. They don't think that way. Or they do, but they don't know how to say it.
Mm,
So that's cool.
right.
Well, how do people get in contact with you, man? Thanks. So, no, first, thank you. Like, I appreciate it. thank you for being successful. Thank you for pushing and growing and scaling and constantly, trying to do more. I really appreciate that. I think that should be celebrated a lot more because there's people out there not trying. So, how do people get in contact with you, man?
I mean, you can just go to cashflowcatalystclub.com and check
Okay,
out what I'm doing. Um, that'll get you to an email with me. You can set up a call with me right from that platform. So cashflowcatalystclub.com,
nice.
simplest way.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. And Instagram, all that other stuff as well, like LinkedIn.
Instagram, Brett underscore EBITDA. I had to
Okay,
own the name EBITDA. So I attached myself to the prophet, right? So Brett underscore EBITDA. That's Brett with two T's underscore EBITDA.
perfect, perfect, perfect. Well, hey,
Brett
man,
Holcomb, LinkedIn, Brett
LinkedIn.
Holcomb, Facebook.
Perfect, perfect. And that's Holcomb, Holcomb with a B.
Yep.
So man, again, thanks so much, man, for spending this time with me. Anybody listening, I know you guys really enjoyed this. Like this, share this thing, reach out to Brett. He's amazing. He really is. When I have questions about business or just need to make sure that things are correct, he's somebody I reach out to because I feel like he's a major player in this space and he's going to continue to grow. If you're interested in joining his club for business acquisition,
Yes,
make sure
sir.
you reach out to him
Absolutely.
for what he's doing. I really appreciate you. So, man, any questions or anything like that that you have for me?
Vic, I mean, much. I've asked a million questions of you. Nothing jumps out at me at this moment, but I just want to say I appreciate you too. You've been a great help to me. You helped me organize some of my thoughts. And so I think the same thing of you that you say of me in the real estate space, there's no one I'm going to, if we're talking about apartment buildings in particular,
Yeah.
you're my guy. I'm going to go reach out to you because your depth and that breadth of knowledge that you have in the space is pretty much unmatched, and your willingness, more importantly, to help people. So more than a question, just a comment that I have for you that I want you to continue and just be that gracious person that you've always been. You get all you gotta do is reach out to Vic and a 5-minute phone call will turn into a 5-hour phone call and you will get all kinds of information. I'm not setting you up for that,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying Vic will give you some information for sure. So we appreciate you for that.
For sure, man. I appreciate you, man. I do. I do. So, again, you guys make sure to reach out to Brett, join his club, follow him. If you have questions, make sure to kind of join what he's doing. I think it's going to be a huge benefit for you. And we'll stay in touch, Brett. Like I said, thanks so much for spending time with me and the people that are watching and stuff like that. And this is going to be great. I appreciate you. All right. So, thanks, man. Have a great day today. All right.